A talented but overlooked young tattoo artist in a struggling, traditional parlor faces constant dismissal. When a disheveled, frantic old woman rushes in needing urgent help for her beloved injured show dog, the artist is the only one who sees beyond her eccentric appearance. Their act of kindness leads to their unfair dismissal, only for the old woman to reveal her surprising identity, setting the stage for a dramatic shift in fortune. In a small, windswept coastal town, nestled between the salt-laced air and the rhythmic crash of waves, stood Ink and Anchor. It wasn't some trendy new spot. No, this was a bastion of the old guard, a tattoo parlor steeped in tradition and the scent of stale cigarette smoke and antiseptic. Fluorescent lights hummed over walls plastered with faded flash art, depicting nautical themes and bold, classic designs. The other artists, seasoned veterans with callous hands and gruff demeanors, move with a slow, deliberate rhythm, often breaking for cards or grumbling about the dwindling walk-ins. But amidst the seasoned stalwarts was Maya, a quiet 22-year-old with a sketchbook full of dreams and a touch as light as a feather. Her talent for intricate, modern designs, the delicate curve of a rose, the lifelike gleam in an animal's eye, often went unnoticed or worse, was subtly dismissed. Too soft. Sully, the parlor's owner, would grunt, his own work favoring thick lines and bold colors. Stick to the classics, kid. He was a man steeped in tradition who valued grit over grace, and Maya's quiet brilliance often landed her the quick, less desirable jobs, while her more ambitious designs gathered dust in her portfolio. She'd clench her jaw, swallow the unspoken retort, and keep her head down, her rapid-fire needle a quiet rebellion against their apathy. Every day, Maya lived with a quiet urgency. Her art wasn't just a passion. It was a lifeline. Back home, there were bills, dreams of a brighter future, and the silent weight of a younger sibling who needed special care. She'd spend her lunch breaks scrolling through images of vibrant modern studios, sketching new ideas, clinging to the hope that one day she could build a place where creativity wasn't stifled but celebrated. The morning of the incident began like any other, until the old bell above the door jangled with frantic, desperate energy. It was a sound that cut through the low hum of the machines and the lazy banter. A woman burst in, disheveled and wild-haired, clutching a whimpering bundle of fur. Her clothes were mismatched, her face etched with panic, and her voice rasped with urgency. "My Clementine. She needs help now. She was hit just outside. The vet, they're closed. Her leg. She's at a show this weekend." The reaction from the others was immediate and unforgiving. "Lady, this is a tattoo parlor, not an animal clinic." One tech barked, annoyance clear in his voice. Sully waved her away with a dismissive hand. "Take your dog to an actual vet." Customers in the waiting area shifted uncomfortably, some even scoffing, muttering about crazy old ladies and strays. The old woman, Eleanor, looked utterly defeated, tears welling in her eyes as she clutched the whimpering dog, Clementine, tighter. But Maya saw past the wild hair and the eccentric clothes. She saw the raw, desperate plea in Eleanor's eyes, the genuine fear for her beloved pet. She stepped forward, her voice calm and clear, a stark contrast to the harshness around them. "Wait, ma'am. Let me just see." She offered a clean rag, her movements gentle, reassuring. With surprising precision, Maya knelt and carefully examined Clementine's injured leg. Her artist's hands, usually tracing intricate designs, moved with surprising tenderness. From an online first aid course she'd taken, she recognized a dislocated joint. "I can't fix it completely," she explained softly, "but I can make her more comfortable and keep it from getting worse until you get her to the emergency vet." Eleanor, initially skeptical, watched Maya with a glimmer of hope. From across the room, the taunts began. "Look at Maya, playing Dr. Doolittle." A senior artist scoffed. Sully, meanwhile, had begun to simmer, his face tightening with irritation at the disruption. Then Sully stormed over. "Maya, what the hell do you think you're doing? This is my parlor, not some rescue shelter. You're making us look like a joke." Eleanor tried to interject, offering to pay, but Sully cut her off. "I don't care about your money, lady. We have standards. Maya, you know the rules. No personal projects, no unauthorized services. Maya stood her ground, her voice low but solid. She's in distress, Sully. No one else was helping. This is just a basic act of kindness. She looked around at the indifferent faces, then back at him. I thought this place was about passion, about art, about helping people express themselves. Isn't this just another way to help? Sully's eyes narrowed, his lip curling. Your passion is costing me business. Pack your things, Maya. You're done. A quiet nod of acceptance was Maya's only response. Not shock, but a deep, sad understanding of a truth she'd always known. Eleanor looked distraught. I'm so sorry, dear. Maya shook her head. Don't be. It's not your fault they don't see. The parlor quickly returned to its normal hum after Eleanor and Clementine left. The other artists exchanged glances, some relieved, some vaguely uncomfortable, but no one offered a word of comfort. Maya stood motionless for a moment, then slowly gathered her few personal items and her art notebook. Her chest burned, not with regret, but with a raw, clear sense of injustice. She overheard a muttered comment. All that fuss for some old bat in her mutt wasn't worth it. In the small, cramped back room, Maya slowly packed her art supplies, her hands tracing familiar outlines of her tools. Her tattoo machine, an extension of her own creativity, now seemed a relic of a life she was leaving behind. Liam, one of the younger apprentices, often quiet and intimidated, approached her tentatively. Hey, Maya, that was messed up what he did. He paused and added, You're a really good artist, better than anyone here. Maya offered him a small, weary smile. Yeah, she said quietly. That's the problem. She left without another word, her bag feeling heavy with not just tools, but the weight of every time she'd been forced to swallow her pride. As Maya stepped out into the crisp coastal air, the old woman, Eleanor, was still there, waiting by a slightly battered, yet surprisingly well-maintained antique car. Clementine was now calm, resting gently on her lap, Maya's makeshift splint holding firm. Maya blinked, surprised. Thought you'd be at the emergency vet by now. Eleanor's eyes, tired but now clear, met hers. Got Clementine settled. She's stable, thanks to you. She hesitated, then reached out, her grip surprisingly strong as she took Maya's hand. My name is Eleanor. She looked at Maya with a depth of understanding. Because I've been where you are, dear. Because nobody should have to pay that kind of price for doing the right thing. She handed Maya a small, ornate business card with only a name and a single phone number. With a faint, knowing smile, Eleanor got into her car, a classic Bentley, and drove away, disappearing into a quiet street as if she were never there. Maya stood there for a long moment, the card a strange weight in her hand, bewildered but with a spark of something new igniting within her. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty for Maya. She applied for other jobs, faced polite rejections, and felt the familiar sting of bills piling up. She spent her time sketching, refining the intricate designs she loved, trying to sell small art pieces online just to make ends meet. She'd watch her sibling, their needs a constant reminder of her responsibility, yet also a fierce motivator. There were moments of doubt, stretches of quiet despair, but she found a strange clarity in her newfound freedom. She was no longer trapped, no longer forced to dilute her art or her compassion. She even volunteered at a local animal shelter, her hand still finding purpose in gentleness. Miles away, in a gleaming high-rise in the city, a tense board meeting was underway at the headquarters of a prestigious, world-renowned dog show organization. The CEO, a sharp, imposing woman with an air of refined authority, addressed the board about a recent incident involving a valuable show dog and a potential public relations nightmare. Just then, Eleanor, now impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, entered the room. Her presence commanded immediate respect. It was clear she was a figure of immense influence. Eleanor calmly recounted the incident at Ink and Anchor, her voice measured but firm. She described Sully's blatant disregard for Clementine's distress, his cold dismissal of a frantic owner, and then Maya's selfless act of kindness that had saved Clementine and ensured she could still compete in a crucial upcoming show that was linked to a major brand deal. She revealed her significant stake in the company, her ownership of several key properties in the town, including the very building where Ink and Anchor resided. Her displeasure with Sully's actions and his treatment of Maya was chillingly clear. Back in the dusty parlor, Sully was met with an unexpected visit from a representative of the building's owner. The confrontation was brief, cold, and entirely one-sided. Sully's smug confidence evaporated, replaced by shock, then fury, then a defeated resignation. He was escorted out, clutching a small box of personal effects, his face a mask of disbelief as the other artists watched in stunned silence. Liam, the apprentice, observed with wide eyes, a mix of shock and quiet satisfaction, as the Ink and Anchor sign was unceremoniously taken down, replaced by a "for least notice." Days later, Maya's phone rang. It was Eleanor's assistant, her voice polite, professional, and entirely unexpected. The conversation that followed unfolded like a dream, an offer that far surpassed any job Maya could have imagined. It wasn't just a position. It was Eleanor's full backing, an investment to open her own high-end tattoo and art studio in a prime location in the city, with a network of influential clients already eager to commission her unique designs. And so Maya, no longer overlooked, no longer stifled, stood at the grand opening of the unseen canvas. The studio was bright, modern, filled with natural light, and adorned with her vibrant, intricate art. Liam, the young apprentice from Ink and Anchor, was there too, her first employee, eager to learn from a mentor who embodied everything Sully was not. Eleanor, with Clementine by her side, was among the first to congratulate her, a quiet, knowing smile on her face. Maya looked out at the thriving space, at the happy clients, at the art that was finally being celebrated. She thought about the old parlor, the dismissal, the injustice. They say, good things come to those who wait, she mused. Maybe, but sometimes good things come to those who see beyond the surface, who choose compassion, even when it costs them everything. Because the true masterpiece isn't on the skin, it's in the heart. She took a deep breath, a sense of profound peace and purpose settling over her. For the first time in her life, Maya felt truly seen, truly free. In a quaint coastal town, where the salty sea air perpetually mingled with the scent of pine and brewing coffee, stood Ink and Anchor. It wasn't one of those sleek, minimalist studios found in the city, nor did it boast neon signs or a bustling, trendy vibe. No, this was a testament to a bygone era, a tattoo parlor that felt as weathered and lived in as the old fishing boats in the harbor. The paint on its exterior was faded, chipped in places by years of sea spray and sun, and the bell above the entrance door had a weak, almost melancholic jingle. Step inside, and you were immediately enveloped by the distinctive aroma of antiseptic, stale cigarette smoke, and the faint, metallic tang of ink, a scent that clung to the very fabric of place. The walls were a gallery of the past, adorned with yellow flash art depicting roaring tigers with dagger teeth, defiant eagles clutching banners, and classic nautical motifs. Anchors, lighthouses, and ships sailing stormy seas. Each design seemed to carry the weight of countless stories, etched into skin and memory. The atmosphere within Ink and Anchor often mirrored the ebb and flow of the tide outside, mostly slow, occasionally stirring, but with an undeniable underlying stagnation. The resident artists, men with decades of experience etched onto their own forearms, moved with a leisurely pace. They were masters of the traditional, the bold lines and vibrant colors that had defined the craft for generations. More often than not, you'd find them leaning back in their chairs, a deck of cards spread on a nearby counter, or sipping from oversized mugs, their conversations punctuated by grumbles about slow business or the baffling appeal of newfangled art. They'd tease each other with a gruff camaraderie, their laughter echoing a comfortable familiarity. But their eyes often held a weariness, a quiet resistance to change. Then there was Maya. At just 22, she was an anomaly in this traditional world, a quiet counterpoint to their boisterous routines. She possessed a natural, almost breathtaking talent for intricate, modern designs. Her sketchbook, usually clutched close or open on her workstation, overflowed with delicate, realistic nature scenes. The soft unfurling of a rose petal, the precise veining of a leaf, the soulful depth in an animal's eye. She was often hunched over her station, a tiny needle pen moving with meticulous precision, lost in the miniature world she was bringing to life. Her clothes were simple, practical, often paint splattered and subtly stained with ink, a testament to her constant immersion in her craft. But in the old-school hierarchy of ink and anchor, Maya's quiet brilliance often went unnoticed or, worse, was actively dismissed. Sully, the parlor owner, was the chief proponent of this disregard. A gruff man whose face seemed permanently set in a disapproving scowl. He saw little value in Maya's delicate artistry. "Too soft, kid," he'd grunt, squinting at her intricate floral designs. "Where's the grit? Where's the power?" He only valued the bold, the traditional, the tattoos that roared, not whispered. Maya would take the subtle jabs about her age, her soft designs, or her perceived lack of grit with a quiet clenching of her jaw, a silent endurance she had perfected. She was often assigned the less desirable tattoos, quick, generic symbols, or simple lettering that offered fast money, but no creative satisfaction. Each time, she'd complete the work flawlessly, her hand steady, her focus unwavering, but a small part of her soul would ache for the recognition her true talent deserved. Beyond the hum of the tattoo machine and the ingrained scent of disinfectant, Maya's mind was a vibrant, sprawling canvas. She might have spent her days executing the bold, uninspired design Sully preferred, but in her thoughts, she was building a different kind of sanctuary. It was a studio bathed in natural light, not the flickering pallor of fluorescent tubes. A place where walls weren't covered in faded flash art, but proudly displayed dynamic, evolving pieces, where the creativity she poured into her sketchbook could finally unfurl, untamed and celebrated. She saw artists collaborating, clients discussing visions, and a palpable energy of artistic freedom, a stark contrast to the stifling air of ink and anchor. This wasn't just a business dream. It was a deep, yearning wish for a space where her soul felt truly a home, where art was a conversation, not just a transaction. But these dreams, vivid and insistent as they were, often collided with the harsh realities tethering her to the very place that stifled her. There was her younger brother, Leo, whose bright, inquisitive eyes belied a fragile health. His specialized care, the endless cycle of appointments and medications, laid a heavy, unspoken burden on Maya's young shoulders. Every dollar earned, every extra shift taken, was for him for the hope of his comfort and well-being, coupled with the relentless weight of her own student loan debt, a lingering consequence of her brief, hopeful foray into art school before life's demands pulled her back. The thought of walking away from even the meager income from ink and anchor felt like an impossible luxury. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and Leo was asleep, she furtively scrolled through online art school brochures or glossy images of independent studios, a flicker of longing igniting in her eyes before the glow of the screen faded, leaving her once more in the practical shadows of her obligations. It was nearly 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning when the mundane rhythm of the parlor was abruptly shattered. The old bell above the door, usually emitting a weak, almost tired jingle, now shrieked frantically as if startled by the sudden force behind it. All eyes, accustomed to the slow creep of the day, snapped toward the entrance. A disheveled, eccentric old woman burst in, her silver hair a wild halo around a face contorted with panic. Her mismatched clothes seemed to have been thrown on in a desperate rush, and she clutched a whimpering bundle wrapped in a faded, floral blanket to her chest. She was frantic, near tears, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "My Clementine!" she cried, her voice raspy with a desperate urgency that cut through the low hum of tattoo machines. "She needs help now. She was hit just outside. The vet, they're closed. Her leg. She's at a show this weekend." The whimpering bundle stirred, revealing the small, delicate head of a tiny show dog, its eyes wide with pain. Her desperation was raw, unvarnished, laid bare for all to see. Yet her appearance, her wild hair, her frantic energy, the very idea of a show dog in a place like Ink and Anchor immediately put everyone off. It was a clear signal to the hardened regulars and the cynical artists that this was not their problem, and certainly not their kind of customer. The frantic plea of the old woman, her voice raspy with panic, hung in the air for a moment, thick with unspoken judgment. Then the collective dismissal began. From a station in the corner, one of the burly, older artists scoffed, his voice laced with annoyance. "Lady, this is a tattoo parlor, not an animal clinic." His words cut through the desperate cries of Clementine, loud enough for everyone to hear. Sully, ever the guardian of his establishment's perceived professionalism, didn't even bother to look up from his desk. He simply waved a dismissive hand, a gesture of absolute finality. "Take your dog to an actual vet," he grumbled, his tone flat, devoid of any sympathy. In the small waiting area, a few customers, clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle, shifted uneasily in their seats. One man, already looking impatient, muttered under his breath about crazy old ladies, while another openly scoffed, as if the sheer audacity of an animal in distress in a tattoo parlor was an insult to their time. No one moved to help. No one offered a kind word. The old woman, her shoulders slumping further with each wave of rejection, seemed to shrink into herself. Her eyes, brimming with unshed tears, darted around the cold, indifferent room, finally settling on her whimpering dog. She clutched the small, trembling bundle tighter, a silent, heartbroken testament to her helplessness. But amidst the collective turning of backs, Maya, who had been quietly observing from her workstation, felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. It was the same feeling she got when her own art was dismissed, when her quiet efforts were overlooked. She didn't see a disheveled, crazy old lady or an inconvenient animal. She saw raw, unadulterated distress. She saw a living creature in pain and a human being consumed by fear. It was an instinct, a quiet, unwavering conviction that propelled her forward. Without a word, she moved from behind her counter, her tools momentarily forgotten. Her steps were deliberate, unhurried, cutting a path through the apathy. "Wait, ma'am." Maya's voice was calm, a soothing balm in the cacophony of indifference. It was barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the murmurs and the whirring of the machines. "Let me just see." There was no judgment in her tone, only a simple, genuine offer of help. She gently approached the old woman, whose eyes, wide with surprise, finally met hers. Maya extended a steady hand, not to touch the injured animal yet, but to offer a clean rag she grabbed from her station, then a bottle of water. "You look like you could use this," she said softly, her gaze warm and reassuring. It was a gesture of pure human kindness, the first flicker of warmth in a cold, unforgiving room. With a calm focus that belied the chaos around them, Maya knelt beside Eleanor, gently reaching for the whimpering bundle. Her artist's hands, so accustomed to the delicate precision of a tattoo machine, moved with surprising tenderness as she carefully unwrapped Clementine. The tiny dog, still trembling, whined softly, but didn't struggle against Maya's touch. Maya's fingers, nimble and accustomed to intricate detail, probed gently around the injured limb. She could feel the subtle wrongness, the slight misalignment that spoke of a strain or a twist. It was a dislocated joint or perhaps a minor fracture, she surmised, drawing on the limited but practical knowledge gleaned from an online first aid course she'd once taken. A course she'd seen as just another way to expand her general knowledge, never imagining she'd apply it to an injured show dog in a tattoo parlor. "I can't fix it completely," Maya explained softly to Eleanor, her voice steady and reassuring. "But I can make her more comfortable and keep it from getting worse until you get her to the emergency vet." Her eyes, compassionate and earnest, met Eleanor's, conveying a sincerity that cut through the old woman's lingering fear. Eleanor, initially hesitant, watching Maya with a wary skepticism born of previous rejections, now began to relax. A fragile spark of hope flickered in her tear-filled eyes as she watched the young artist work. From their distant stations, the other artists observed the scene, their faces a mixture of amusement and thinly veiled contempt. "Look at Maya," one of them scoffed, his voice carrying clearly across the quieted shop, "playing Dr. Dolittle." Another snickered, muttering something about side hustles and animal freaks. Their words were meant to belittle, to underscore Maya's perceived foolishness in stepping outside her designated role. Meanwhile, Sully, hunched over his desk, cast increasingly irritated glances in Maya's direction. His heavy brows were drawn together in a permanent scowl, and a vein pulsed visibly in his temple. This wasn't just a distraction. It was a blatant disregard for his authority, a visible disruption of his precious professionalism. Every gentle movement Maya made, every soft word she uttered to the whimpering dog, fueled his growing fury. He watched her, a slow, simmering resentment building, already formulating the words he would use to put her back in her place. The air in ink and anchor, usually thick with the low-hum machines, was now heavy with unspoken judgment and rising tension, a fuse silently burning, ready to ignite. Sully had reached his boiling point. His face, usually a mask of gruff indifference, was now flushed with unbridled fury. He stormed across the parlor, his heavy boots thudding against the concrete floor, the sound echoing the rapid beat of his rising anger. He stopped just feet from Maya, looming over her and the still whimpering Clementine. "Maya, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he bellowed, his voice laced with venom. "This is my parlor, not some rescue shelter. You're making us look like a joke." His words sliced through the tense silence, leaving no room for argument. Eleanor, her fear for Clementine momentarily overshadowed by the injustice unfolding before her, tried to interject, her voice trembling but firm. "She's helping my Clementine." "I'll pay anything," she pleaded, reaching into her pocket. But Sully cut her off with a sharp, dismissive gesture, his eyes fixed on Maya. "I don't care about your money, lady. We have standards. Maya, you know the rules. No personal projects, no unauthorized services." He spat out the last words like a reprimand to a disobedient child. Maya, however, didn't flinch. She slowly rose to her feet, her posture straight, her gaze unwavering as she met Sully's furious stare. Her voice, though calm, held an unshakable steel. "She's in distress, Sully. No one else was helping. This is just a basic act of kindness." She wasn't pleading. She was stating a simple truth. Then, a rare flash of defiance entered her voice as she gently laid Clementine back in Eleanor's arms. "I've done double shift for you, Sully. I've taken every quick money job, every late-night walk-in no one else wanted. I thought this place was about passion, about art, about helping people express themselves. Isn't this just another way to help?" Sully's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits, his lip curling in a sneer. "Your passion is costing me business," he snarled, his voice low and menacing. His hand, thick and calloused, pointed decisively towards the door. "Pack your things, Maya. You're done." A stunned silence descended upon the parlor, broken only by Clementine's soft whines. Maya didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply stared back at Sully, not with shock, but with profound, almost bone-deep understanding. It was a deep, sad acceptance of a truth she had always suspected. In this place, her value was conditional, her compassion a liability. Eleanor, her face etched with dismay, murmured, "I'm so sorry, dear." Maya gently shook her head. "Don't be," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, yet firm. "It's not your fault they don't see." The stunned silence that followed Sully's harsh decree quickly dissipated, replaced by the familiar, low hum of the tattoo machines. The parlor, as if eager to erase the awkwardness, seemed to settle back into its normal rhythm with unsettling ease. The other artists, their faces a mixture of relief that the confrontation wasn't directed at them and a vague, fleeting discomfort at Maya's abrupt dismissal, exchanged quick glances. Some, like the one who'd scoffed earlier, subtly smirked, as if validating their own prejudices. Yet, not a single one offered Maya a word of support, a nod of solidarity, or even a sympathetic glance. Their silence was a loud, chilling agreement with Sully's decision. And Sully himself? He looked utterly smug, a triumphant glint in his eye, entirely confident it had just stamped out a disruptive spark and restored order to his traditional domain. Maya stood motionless for a long moment, the sting of Sully's words still raw, echoing in the sudden emptiness around her. The familiar sounds of the shop, once a comforting backdrop to her work, now felt alien, almost mocking. Her chest burned, not with anger or tears, but with a quiet, searing sense of injustice. It was a hard truth, solid and undeniable, that no matter how many extra hours she'd logged, how many difficult clients she'd patiently handled, or how much genuine talent she brought to this worn-out space, she was ultimately disposable. Her compassion, her integrity, had been her undoing here. She slowly, deliberately, began to gather her few personal items, a favorite pen, a small ceramic mug, and her precious art notebook, its pages filled with the vibrant designs that were her true voice. As she moved, she overheard a muttered comment from one of the senior artists, just loud enough to reach her ears. All that fuss for some old bat and her mutt. Not worth it, bro. The words were a final, bitter confirmation of the gulf between her and the world she was now leaving. Maya retreated to the small, cramped back room, a space barely large enough for a locker and a dusty, chipped bench. It smelled faintly of old cleaning supplies and forgotten hopes. The single, bare bulb overhead cast a dim, yellow light, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. This was where she kept her most cherished possessions. Her personal art supplies, the carefully rolled tubes of specialty ink, and her sketchbooks, bulging with designs too avant-garde for Sully's traditional sensibilities. Slowly, deliberately, she began to pack them, each item a tangible piece of the dreams now being unceremoniously evicted. Her fingers traced the smooth, well-worn grips of her tattoo machine, a device that had felt like an extension of her own hand for years. It was more than just a tool. It was a conduit for her creativity, her connection to the outside world, and the promise of a future. Now it felt like a cold, inert object, detached from her purpose. The air in the small room was thick with her unspoken disappointment, a palpable silence that seemed to weigh down on her shoulders. She zipped up her bag, the sound sharp and final in the quiet space. Just as she was about to turn, the door creaked open. It was Liam, one of the newer apprentices, barely out of high school. He was a quiet, unassuming kid, often intimidated by Sully's bluster and the other artist's gruffness. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, shuffling his feet, his gaze fixed somewhere on the floor between them. "Hey, Maya," he mumbled, his voice barely audible, a hesitant whisper that broke the heavy silence. That was messed up what he did. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, but something in his eyes, a flicker of genuine empathy, held his ground. He hesitated for another long moment, gathering courage, then added, his voice gaining a touch more conviction. "You're a really good artist. Better than anyone here, honestly." Maya looked at him, a small, weary smile touching her lips. It wasn't a triumphant smile, but one laced with a deep, almost painful understanding. Liam's words, though simple, were the first and only validation she'd received all day. "Yeah," she replied, her voice soft but firm, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. "That's the problem, Liam." She didn't elaborate. There was no need to. Liam understood the unspoken truth. Her talent, her drive, her compassion. These were not virtues in Sully's world. They were precisely what made her a threat. With a final glance at the empty locker, Maya turned, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if she were carrying not just her tools, but the weight of every slight, every swallowed word, every denied dream from her time in that stifling parlor. She left without another word, Liam watching her go, a newfound respect dawning in his young eyes. Maya stepped out of the ink and anchor parlor. The quiet jingle of the doors bell a final, mournful chime behind her. The coastal air, crisp and bracing, hit her face, a welcome shock after the stale, oppressive atmosphere inside. Her duffel bag, heavy with a displaced life, felt like a physical burden. She took a deep, shuddering breath, intending to simply walk away, to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of the town's quiet streets. But then she paused. There at the edge of the curb, where the chipped asphalt met the worn sidewalk, stood the old woman. Eleanor hadn't left. She was waiting patiently by a car that, despite its covering of fine dust and the slight wear on its paint, was undeniably a classic, perhaps a vintage Bentley, its line speaking of a bygone era of quiet luxury. Clementine, the small show dog, rested calmly on Eleanor's lap, no longer whimpering. Maya's makeshift splint, fashioned for whatever was at hand in the parlor, held firm, a testament to her quick thinking and gentle touch. Eleanor's eyes, though still tired, now held a newfound clarity, a sharp intelligence that Maya hadn't noticed amidst the earlier panic. A faint, knowing smile touched the old woman's lips. "Thank you, dear," Eleanor said, her voice softened now, devoid of the earlier rasp of desperation, yet imbued with profound sincerity. "Truly, You saved my Clementine." There was no exaggeration in her tone, just quiet conviction. Before Maya could formulate a reply, Eleanor extended a hand, her grip surprisingly firm and strong as she took Maya's own. It was a handshake that spoke not of fragility, but of enduring resolve and quiet authority. "My name is Eleanor." She held Maya's gaze, a silent acknowledgment passing between them, a shared understanding forged in that moment of unlikely compassion. "If you ever need anything, truly anything at all, find me." The offer hung in the air, a mysterious promise. As she spoke, Eleanor slipped a small, exquisitely ornate business card into Maya's palm. It was remarkably simple, bearing only the name Eleanor Vance and a single, elegant phone number. No company name, no title, no address, just a direct, almost cryptic invitation. With a final, meaningful look, Eleanor gently released Maya's hand. She then carefully settled Clementine onto the passenger seat of the antique car, got in, and with a quiet hum of the engine, pulled away from the curb. The vehicle, despite its age, glided smoothly into the stream of passing cars, blending seamlessly into the quiet street, then disappearing around the corner, as if it had never been there at all. Maya stood there, frozen, the small, ornate card a strange, solid weight in her hand. Bewilderment washed over her, mixing with the lingering sense of injustice and a flicker of unexpected hope. The entire encounter felt like a dream, yet the card in her hand was undeniably real, a mysterious connection to a world she knew nothing about. The days immediately following Maya's dismissal from ink and anchor stretched into a monotonous blur of uncertainty. Each morning brought the grim routine of searching for a new job. She scrolled through online listings, visited other shops in town, and sent out countless applications, only to be met with polite rejections or, more often, a resounding silence. The rejection stung, a stark reminder of her precarious situation, but she bore them with a quiet fortitude. Every evening, as the light faded, she returned to her small apartment, the weight of her responsibilities pressing down. Her younger brother, Leo, with his bright, curious eyes and his relentless need for specialized care, was a constant, loving reminder of why she pushed forward, even when hope felt like a distant shore. The mounting pile of medical bills, coupled with the unforgiving burden of her student loan debt, formed an invisible chain, seemingly tethering her to the very ground she stood on. Yet, amidst this hardship, a quiet transformation began to stir within Maya. No longer bound by Sully's outdated rules or the stifling atmosphere of ink and anchor, her creativity, once a muffled whisper, started to sing. She spent hours lost in her sketchbook, refining the intricate, nature-inspired designs that were her true artistic voice. Her fingers, accustomed to precision of a tattoo machine, now danced across paper, bringing vibrant, detailed worlds to life. She tried selling small art pieces online, each sale a tiny victory against the overwhelming current of her circumstances. This was her art, untainted by compromise, blossoming freely. She might have been struggling financially, but she carried a profound sense of integrity, a quiet pride in pursuing her authentic path. She was no longer trapped in a stifling environment, no longer forced to conform. The fear of the unknown was still a constant companion, but it was tempered by a newfound sense of self-ownership, a liberating realization that she was finally fostering her true artistic voice. Miles away from the quiet coastal town, in the heart of a bustling city, glass and steel soared into the sky, forming the headquarters of K9 Elite, a world-renowned organization that managed the most prestigious dog shows and represented a formidable high-end pet luxury brand. Within this architectural marvel, high above the urban sprawl, a tense board meeting was underway. The room itself was a study in polished authority. A long, gleaming mahogany table, plush leather chairs, and panoramic windows framing the city skyline. Gathered around the table were impeccably dressed executives, their expressions grim, their posture rigid. At the head of the table sat Julian Thorne, the CEO, a sharp, imposing figure in his late 40s with eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. He was Eleanor Vance's nephew, a fact known only to a select few, and a man who prided himself on control. Currently, however, he was addressing the board with an air of barely contained frustration. "The incident with Clementine," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, has created a significant crisis in public relations. Our key sponsors are nervous, and the ripple effect on the upcoming national show could be catastrophic. We need to mitigate the damage immediately. The air in the room was thick with a scent of high-stakes tension and barely suppressed anxiety. They were discussing Clementine, the very show Dog Maya had just helped. Just as the discussion reached a fever pitch, the grand double doors at the end of the room swung open silently, and all heads turned. Eleanor Vance entered. She was no longer the disheveled, frantic old woman from Ink and Anchor. Today, she was immaculately dressed in a tailored silk suit, her silver hair styled into an elegant chignon, and a string of lustrous pearls gracing her neck. Her eyes, which had held panic days ago, now gleamed with sharp, piercing intelligence. Her presence, quiet yet commanding, instantly silenced the room. This was clearly a person of immense authority and respect within this world, a matriarch whose word carried undeniable weight. Eleanor walked slowly to the head of the table, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the stunned executives, before settling on her nephew. "You may stand down, Julian," she said, her voice clear and resonant, completely devoid of the rasp it had held days prior. "I believe I can shed some light on Clementine's recovery." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle, and then delivered the news that shocked many. "Clementine is not only fine, but she is ready to compete, and that, I assure you, is thanks to an extraordinary young woman." With calm, measured words, Eleanor began to recount the entire incident at the tattoo parlor. She detailed, with chilling precision, Sully's blatant disregard for a desperate plea, his cold dismissal of a valuable animal in distress, and his utter lack of empathy. She described the callous indifference of the other artists, painting a stark picture of a business devoid of human decency. Then her voice softened, imbuing every word with profound gratitude, as she spoke of Maya's selfless act. She highlighted Maya's quick thinking, her gentle touch, and her quiet courage in stepping forward when everyone else turned their backs. Eleanor emphasized how Maya's kindness, born of a simple human impulse, had not only saved Clementine from prolonged suffering, but had, by extension, averted a crucial disaster for the upcoming national show and protected a major brand deal that had been hanging in the balance. Then came the hammer blow, delivered with quiet authority that left no room for appeal. Eleanor revealed her formidable influence. "It's come to my attention that the proprietor of Ink and Anchor demonstrated not only a shocking lack of professional conduct, but a deplorable disregard for basic human compassion. As it happens, I am the primary investor in the holding company that owns a building where Ink and Anchor conducts its business, and I also hold a significant stake in the local business council." Her gaze hardened. "I find Sully's actions and the manner in which he treated that extraordinary young woman to be utterly unacceptable. Such behavior has no place in our community, nor in any establishment connected, however remotely, to our interests." The unspoken sentence hung in the air. Sully's unwitting doom had been sealed the moment he uttered the words, "You're done." The reckoning for Sully came swiftly, delivered not with the fanfare of a public spectacle, but with the quiet, chilling efficiency of a carefully orchestrated demise. It began with a formal letter, delivered by a stiff, impeccably dressed representative from the building's holding company. A company, as Sully would soon discover, that was now entirely under the sway of Eleanor Vance. The letter, devoid of emotion, outlined a series of breaches of lease agreement and conduct unbecoming of a tenant, culminating in an immediate termination of his lease for Ink and Anchor. Sully was, at first, in utter disbelief. He roared, he raged, he slammed his fist on his desk, convinced it was a mistake, a clerical error, a joke. He called the number on the letter, only to be met with polite but unyielding confirmation. His anger quickly morphed into a desperate scramble, frantic phone calls to his lawyer, to the city council, to anyone who might listen. But every door was closed. Every contact was suddenly unreachable. Eleanor Vance, it seemed, had ensured his isolation. The shock was palpable, quickly followed by a bitter, consuming rage. How could this be happening? All for some crazy old woman and her yappy dog? The final, humiliating act unfolded just 2 days later. The same unsmiling representative arrived at Ink and Anchor, this time with a small team. Sully was formally instructed to gather his personal belongings and vacate the premises within the hour. There was no room for argument, no negotiation. His bluster, his authority, his very identity as the gruff proprietor, crumbled before their calm, implacable resolve. He stomped around his parlor, grabbing personal items, a worn coffee mug, a framed photo of a younger, smugger Sully holding a tattoo gun, a handful of business cards. Each item felt worthless, tainted by a sudden, crushing defeat. The remaining artists watched from their stations, frozen in a stunned silence. Their usual banter had died in their throats, replaced by a morbid fascination. No longer laughing at Maya's expense, they now bore witness to their own leader's public unraveling. Some looked genuinely shocked, their faces pale, finally grasping the true reach of the power Sully had so foolishly challenged. Others, who had silently endured his petty tyrannies, felt a prickle of uneasy satisfaction, a cold justice delivered. Liam, the young apprentice, stood wide-eyed in the doorway of the back room, his jaw slack. He watched Sully, his face a mask of furious indignation and absolute defeat, being escorted out by a silent, watchful security guard. It was a scene he would replay in his mind for years. The man who had dismissed Maya, who had belittled kindness, was now stripped of all his authority, reduced to a humbled, defeated figure. A mix of shock at the suddenness of it all and a quiet, profound satisfaction stirred within Liam. Within hours, the transformation began. The faded, iconic Ink and Anchor sign, a symbol of Sully's reign, was unbolted from its perch above the door, leaving behind a faint, ghost-like outline on the chipped paint. By the end of the day, a crisp white for lease sign, starkly new against the building's weathered facade, was prominently displayed in the window. The old parlor, once a bastion of tradition, now stood empty, silent, and ready for a new chapter, all thanks to a selfless act of kindness and the unseen power of an old woman. The days that followed Sully's spectacular downfall were a strange mix for Maya. A quiet satisfaction simmered beneath the surface of her persistent job search, but the rejections kept piling up. She was still sketching, still selling her small art pieces online, but the immediate future remained hazy, shrouded in persistent worry for Leo and the looming shadow of her debts. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, as she sat nursing a lukewarm cup of instant coffee, her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, an out-of-state area code. Initially wary, Maya almost had to go to voicemail, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello, this is Maya," she said, her voice a little guarded. A professional, warm voice replied, "Good afternoon, Maya. This is Sarah, Eleanor Vance's assistant. Ms. Vance asked me to reach out to you." Maya's heart gave a little jolt. Eleanor Vance. The name conjured the image of the frantic old woman, then the sharp, elegant lady from the business card. A mix of curiosity and disbelief warred within her. The assistant, sensing Maya's hesitation, calmly continued, her voice radiating quiet confidence. She explained the situation with Ink and Anchor, the swift resolution of Sully's lease, and Eleanor's deep admiration for Maya's integrity and talent. Then came the offer. It wasn't merely a job placement or a polite recommendation. It was an opportunity that felt pulled directly from the most ambitious corners of Maya's dreams. Eleanor Vance was prepared to provide her full backing to help Maya open her own high-end tattoo and art studio. Not just a loan, but a genuine partnership, an investment in Maya's vision. The location, the assistant explained, would be in a prime, bustling area of the nearby city, a stark contrast to the quiet coastal town. And perhaps most astonishingly, Maya would have a guaranteed clientele right from the start, drawn from Eleanor's extensive and highly influential network. It was an unprecedented chance to not only escape her current struggles, but to fully realize the artistic sanctuary she had long envisioned. The very air around Maya seemed to shimmer with possibility. Months later, in a vibrant corner of Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria, where the energy of the city pulsed with a unique rhythm of its own, stood a newly opened studio, Ijuifin, the unseen canvas. It was a space bathed in the warm, golden light that streamed through large, open windows, a far cry from the dim confines of Ink and Anchor. The walls were not plastered with faded traditional designs, but served as a gallery for Maya's breathtaking artwork. Intricate depictions of Yoruba flora and fauna, vibrant abstract patterns inspired by a dire fabric, and soulful portraits that seemed to capture the very essence of their subjects. The air buzzed with creative energy, a palpable excitement that was a direct reflection of Maya's own renewed confidence and artistic vibrancy. Overseeing it all was Maya. No longer quiet, overlooked artist, she moved with newfound assuredness, her eyes sparkling with passion and purpose. Her clothes, while still practical, now held a touch of artistic flair. And working alongside her, diligently honing his craft, was Liam. He had followed her from the coast, eager to learn from the artist he so admired. Now her first employee and a testament to the ripple effect of Maya's kindness. Ijuifahan thrived. The studio quickly became a haven for those seeking unique, meaningful art. Clients, drawn by Maya's exceptional talent and the warm, welcoming atmosphere she cultivated, filled the appointment books. Laughter and the gentle hum of tattoo machines mingled with conversations about art, culture, and personal stories. Maya's creations were celebrated, her unique vision finally recognized and embraced by a community that valued artistry in all its forms. One bright afternoon, Eleanor Vance, elegant and gracious, stepped into the studio. Clementine, now fully recovered and sporting a tiny, fashionable collar, trotting happily at her heels. Their visit was a silent symbol of the enduring bond forged in a moment of unexpected compassion, a reminder that kindness, even in the most unlikely of places, could bloom into something beautiful and transformative. Maya's final reflection, VO, they say good things come to those who wait. Perhaps that is true for some. But sometimes the truly significant blessings arrive when we choose to see, when we look beyond the surface of appearances, when we extend compassion even when it demands a personal cost. Because, in the end, the most profound masterpiece isn't etched onto skin or canvas. It resides within the heart, in the choices we make and the connections we forge. The final scene lingers on Maya, a soft smile gracing her lips as she sketches a new design, the vibrant energy of a Abaddon swirling gently outside her studio window, leaving the audience with a powerful sense of hope, the undeniable triumph of justice, and the enduring transformative power of a single act of kindness in a world often yearning for it.